Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Collier, and her presentation is titled Goddess Spirituality and Matrifocal Families, Empowering Women and Reducing Systemic Patriarchal Oppressions. And now I'm going to take off my moderator hat and put on my presenter hat. First, here we go. I'd like to thank everyone here. It means a lot to me that you took the time to come and listen, and I love getting to see your interest. I'm also thrilled to be part of this conference because I consider it deeply appropriate at this time, a time when we truly desperately need the Cosmic Mother again, especially in my poor country, the US. So, why do we need Cosmic Mother? Many people in the industrialized world already recognize the failure of the iconic so-called nuclear family. They may even be aware of its fundamental link with hegemonic male violence. The issue we face today is, with what do we replace it? In this presentation, I suggest an alternative household form, a woman-led matrifocal family, which draws on the basic social precepts of contemporary egalitarian matriarchal societies, refining them as necessary to function, maybe even thrive, in a currently patriarchal society. So why do we want to rematriate our families and culture? Well, for starters, and with all due respect, hierarchies are not good for cultures or people. They are essentially unfair and exploitative of the oppressed at the bottom of the pyramid. An example, because of organized religion, we know in the United States that men should lead. And that's because their God says women were made to be useful resources for men. As a consequence of this supposedly God-mandated family form, the state itself reflects this social structure as well. Government is led by a patriarch who benevolently governs his extended family. But it's really not healthy for a culture to believe that people can be considered property. For example, because of the social belief that men are more important than women, who rightfully belong to men anyway, we also therefore end up with a sickened culture, which tacitly agrees with male violence used to keep women, non-hegemonic men, and gender-fluid people all shoved down to the bottom of the hierarchy. I'm only going to mention two related statistics here to prove my point, and in fact one of them was the inspiration for my dissertation. And these facts are, in the industrialized countries, the most dangerous place for a woman and her children is in their own home. Further, statistics consistently show that the most dangerous modern predator for women and children is not disease, it's not each other, it's not even accidents, it's men. Fortunately, research also demonstrates that this violence can be stopped. Unfortunately, what stops it is not for a woman to turn to her male family members or to religious leaders or the police or even the courts. No, what studies consistently show is what stops male violence is when women themselves choose to act in close, mutually supportive community. Now, when I first heard this, it inspired this strange new thought to me. If we can subvert the social structure of family, then maybe we can lessen, perhaps even end, structural male violence. Maybe we can even ultimately subvert the shape of the state itself. And I believe eventually, with time and by weaving matriarchal concepts into the social construction of family, create a safer, stronger, more resilient, more productive for everyone, and more egalitarian society. But in order to do this, we have to do more than just consciously reject the dominant social paradigm. So, for example, feminist philosopher and matriarchalist Dr. Heide Göttner-Abendroth, pardon me, I probably pronounced that wrong, I gave it my best shot. She explains the four basic precepts of egalitarian matriarchy as economic reciprocity, non-hierarchical horizontal structures of matrilineal kinship, egalitarian political consensus, and a reverence of the divine feminine and a belief in the sacrality of all things. However much we may want to, though, we can't simply shove these precepts into our own cultures. We don't have the power to insist an entire culture start doing all these things, however good they would be for us. And even if we could, they wouldn't stick, because they're not integral to and supported by the current patriarchal society. Instead, we have to figure out how to repurpose, to revise them so that they can be naturally woven into the social tapestry of our own families and personal lives. Now, initially at least, the first three elements might sound relatively easy to implement, making the last, religiously based one, seem somewhat superfluous. For example, the matrifocal families who participated in my dissertation study all implemented the first three elements very similarly. For economic reciprocity, they created mutually supportive, collaborative community, either through extended family or via warm, close-knit religious communities. To emulate horizontal social structures and matrilinearity, they made fluid families. For example, the modern standard patriarchal family form is rather rigidly boundaried, inward-turning, male-centered, but matrifocal families tend to have more permeable borders in that they routinely, temporarily adopt individuals who need help, regardless of whether those individuals are children or adults. As a result, their focus tends to be not on nurturing the strongest members, but rather on caring for and assisting those family members who most need help, like mothers and their children. The families all preferred an egalitarian political consensus as their decision-making form, but they also implemented what I called empowered responsibility, as in chores were done by those who wanted to do them, rather than being divided up according to patriarchal gender roles. And perhaps most importantly, everyone helped with any children in the family. And that meant that the mothers were not overwhelmed. They were able to receive nurturing themselves. And perhaps most importantly, the children saw good models of healthy mothering in both women and men. Now, despite all this, for all the participant matrifocal families, that last matriarchal precept, everyday sacrality and reverence of the divine feminine, turned out to be strikingly important. A belief in the cosmic mother means you also believe in social approval of women and mothers as strong, wise leaders, as heads of families, of their communities, of religions, even of government itself. Effectively, a belief in the divine feminine weaves all the other precepts together into a coherent worldview and symbol system, and helps prevent later backsliding into a male-dominant household again due to the extremely powerful social pressures to do so in this patriarchal culture. I'm going to quote eco-feminist theologian Dr. Carol P. Christ, who put it best, I think, when she wrote, quote, "Even people who no longer believe in God or participate in the institutional structure of patriarchal religion still may not be free of the power of the symbolism of God the Father. A symbol's effect does not depend on rational assent, for a symbol also functions on levels of the psyche other than the rational. The symbols associated with important rituals cannot fail to affect the deep or unconscious structures of the mind of even a person who has rejected these symbolisms on a conscious level, especially if the person is under stress. Symbol systems cannot be simply rejected, they must be replaced. Where there is not any replacement, the mind will revert to familiar structures at times of crisis, bafflement, celebration, or defeat." End quote. So, how is this expressed in the various participant families? Intriguingly, even without being asked, all the matrifocal women participants mentioned their belief in the sacredness of daily life in their deeply held spiritualities. Further, they all also expressed the importance of shedding their narrow, hegemonic childhood religious training, turning instead to some variant of the divine feminine during their processes of self-reclamation and empowerment. What I found quite extraordinarily was the calmly tolerant spiritual ambiguity all these women shared. They all worship the cosmic mother, but she bears a strikingly different form for each of them. And yet, I believe they could all still have recognized her were they to witness the rituals of all the other families. For example, the New York State family spirituality based in the divine feminine is, I feel, particularly powerful due to its centrality in the life of my participant. After years of research and study to reconstruct the worship of Cybele, Catherine's chosen goddess and cosmic mother, she quite literally lost everything in her past life: family, job, childhood friends, even her birth gender, as she began following these teachings. Fortunately, today my participant lives very comfortably in the closest reproduction she can create of a matriarchal society's sacred clan household, along with other priestesses, worshippers, and pilgrims, living in close connection with the natural environment, which is itself a sacred source and ritual inspiration. The East Bay family deliberately chose a subaltern religion, Ifa, because it spoke to the three of them as lesbian women of color. This religion was almost lost during the African diaspora and survived predominantly due to the efforts of priestesses. The East Bay women take reverent pride in their own spiritual questing, research into the almost forgotten goddesses of Ifa, both to regain the goddesses and to learn and teach as priestesses within their own ile, or spiritual family, in this decentralized and strongly women-affirming spirituality. The Colorado family members display a different form of spirituality. They created theirs out of a family-satisfying bricolage of paganism, half-remembered Judaism, and other spiritual choices made by the family members. The little group grows and bonds more strongly with each other through the shared collective effervescence they mutually create in their inclusive performance of communally crafted rituals, some of which are quite beautiful. By way of contrast, Sophia of the Washington State family prefers traditional women's ways of knowing, such as dreams and intuition. She considers these an integral part of her earth-based spirituality, which is grounded in her relationships with the land, nature, and the people in her life. She too believes all life is sacred and the spiritual is in the everyday. Finally, Maria of the South Bay family chose an extremely personal, modified form of New Age Christianity, one with heavy Eastern spirituality influences. She stated quite firmly to me that while she refers to the deity grammatically as God, the God energy is within her, that effectively she is God, and she believes it is her willpower and personal drive that creates the world she wishes. In conclusion, the 5 participant families were quite diverse in length of family existence, or whether they allowed men, in individual ethnicity, country of birth, age and educational levels, gender and sexual preferences, or even whether the participants were partnered, single mothers, or mothers at all. Despite this, all the participants of their own accord structured themselves into egalitarian, non-hierarchical families focused on mutual assistance. They also employed consensus-based decision-making within the communities they built, sharing goods and responsibilities, and they all strongly believed in the sacrality of life based in a cosmic mother which empowers and validates their alternative matrifocal household form. There was one major difference between the matrifocal families who participated in my study and the contemporary egalitarian matriarchal societies which I researched, something that simply did not exist in the matriarchal societies, but which, horrifyingly, all my research participants and I had experienced, and that is male violence. In psychology, an extinction burst is the outraged and outsized reaction expressed by an individual or group when a behavior no longer elicits the desired, formally dependable response. The proper way to deal with this is sometimes painful, as any parent with a toddler can tell you, but absolutely necessary. Stay the course. Refuse to reward the angry and abusive behavior, and eventually the toddler or the group will give up because the tantrums aren't getting any results. I mention this because I believe this is what we're seeing in the current regime in power in the US today, patriarchy's extinction burst. Yes, it's painful. Yes, people are being hurt, even dying because of it. But if we, the people, can stay the course, if oppressive patriarchal behavior is no longer rewarded, then I believe we can win through. We ourselves at this conference are already turning away from patriarchy and towards the cosmic mother. We already know diversity is not something to be feared. evolutionarily and socially. We have a plethora of studies and living examples about how diversity makes us a stronger, healthier, smarter, kinder, and more resilient people and society. By restructuring our families, our spiritualities, our communities through these matrifocal precepts, we potentially assist not just ourselves and our extended families and communities, but also eventually the culture itself may slowly shift to a healthier, stronger, more unified, and more just society. Thank you for your time and attention.